The modern workplace is a monument to motion. We celebrate the perpetually busy. The inbox zero warriors. The meeting attendees who somehow manage to juggle a dozen projects at once. We mistake activity for achievement. We confuse movement with meaning. But what if the very structure of our working lives is fundamentally flawed? What if the culture of busy work is a sophisticated trap? A silent, insidious tax on human potential that costs us more than we can calculate. This is not a story about working harder. It is a radical proposition about working deeper. It is about the power that lies dormant in the single hour of uninterrupted, intentional focus. An hour that can, and often does, eclipse the value of 10 frantic, fragmented hours spent simply going through the motions. We begin in the neon glow of a city that never sleeps. An environment where distraction is monetized and attention is the most valuable, and most endangered, commodity. We will meet the high-performing executives, the breakthrough artists, and the scientific minds who have quietly cracked the code. They are not working longer, they are working smarter, with a surgical precision that feels almost unfair to those still trapped on the treadmill of perpetual, low-value tasks. They understand a profound truth: the brain is not a multitasking machine. It is a serial processor, capable of deep, complex problem-solving only when granted the courtesy of singular attention. Every notification, every context switch, every minor interruption exacts a cognitive toll. These small, unseen costs accumulate into the crushing inefficiency we call busywork. The hook is simple, yet devastatingly true: the most valuable hour of your week is not the one you spend in a high-profile meeting, but the one you aggressively protect and dedicate to a single, challenging task. This is the new productivity secret. This is the counterintuitive foundation of breakthrough results. We are about to explore the evidence, the science, and the personal stories that prove the principle: 1 hour of focus is worth 10 hours of busywork. The question is, can you afford to ignore this new reality? Our investigation centers on a distinct paradigm shift occurring across various industries. It moves away from the time in office metric and towards value produced. This shift is difficult for legacy institutions to embrace. Their entire infrastructure is built on visible effort, not invisible depth. We introduce two key subjects whose professional lives embody this conflict. First, Dr. Anya Sharma, a computational physicist. Her work demands long, unbroken stretches of deep thought. For Anya, a single typo in a line of code can negate weeks of simulation. Her productivity is measured not by the number of emails she sends, but by the elegance and accuracy of her models. Second, Mark Denton, a marketing agency CEO. His day is a relentless barrage of meetings, crisis management, and team check-ins. Mark is constantly busy, visibly working, yet he feels a growing disconnect between his effort and his company's truly innovative output. His team is burning out on busywork, while the competition, smaller and more agile, keeps delivering fresh, market-shifting ideas. We will also establish the scientific backdrop. The work of cognitive psychologists on attention residue is critical here. Every time you switch tasks, your mind leaves a piece of itself behind on the previous task. This residue diminishes your cognitive capacity for the new task. It's a tax you pay, unconsciously, every time you open a new tab or glance at a notification. The very nature of modern technology is designed to maximize this tax, keeping us perpetually in a state of shallow, reactive work. The stage is the hyperconnected, always-on global economy. The problem is the institutionalized glorification of the hustle over the deep dive. We are examining the invisible fence that separates those who are merely performing effort from those who are generating impact. Mark represents the old world, trapped in a cycle of visible, low-value action. Anya represents the new world, where ruthless protection of cognitive space is the ultimate competitive advantage. Their stories will frame the investigation, showing the tangible, human cost of busy work and the profound rewards of focused concentration. The core mystery is why intelligent, driven people choose to be busy rather than productive. On the surface, it seems counterintuitive. No one wants to be inefficient. Yet, an overwhelming majority of professionals default to a state of reactive busywork. The initial problem is psychological, not logistical. Busyness provides a powerful, immediate dopamine hit. It's a visible signal of effort, both to ourselves and to others. When our calendar is full, our inbox is pinging, and our to-do list is endless, we feel a sense of virtue and accomplishment, even if the underlying tasks are trivial. It's a performance of competence. This feeling acts as a shield against the fear of genuine, high-stakes work. Genuine focus is difficult and often painful. It requires confronting a complex problem, sitting with it, and risking the failure of not finding an answer quickly. Busy work, in contrast, offers the false security of constant, low-risk progress. Answering 20 emails feels like a win, even if that win adds zero value to the company's core mission. We delve into the cultural roots of this pathology. The post-industrial age equated time spent with value created. Punching the clock mattered. But in the knowledge economy, this equation is obsolete. A focused hour of strategic planning or creative coding is qualitatively different from an hour spent filling out spreadsheets or sitting in status updates. Mark Denton, our CEO, is the perfect example of this dilemma. He feels guilty when his calendar has a 2-hour block labeled focus time. He constantly overrides it with urgent, but unimportant, meetings because the cultural pressure is too strong. His perception of his own value is tied to his availability and responsiveness, not his capacity for strategic thought. This is the epidemic, valuing accessibility over genius. We need to dissect this fear of stillness, this pervasive anxiety that unless we are visibly moving, we are falling behind. The core mystery is exposing the cultural and psychological rewards of busy work that mask its devastating impact on true productivity. The first major clue emerged not from business theory, but from the realm of software development and research science. It was the quantifiable measurement of the switch cost. Dr. Anya Sharma's breakthrough provides a crucial discovery. She noticed a pattern in her team's coding errors. When working on a single, massive simulation, any time they had to stop and handle a quick request, a 15-minute meeting, a critical email, the probability of introducing a bug in the code upon returning to the task dramatically increased. She implemented a simple experiment. Group A worked on the complex task with an average of 5 interruptions per hour. Group B worked on the identical task with 0 interruptions for a 2-hour block. The results were stark. Group A took, on average, 3 times longer to complete the project and introduced 40% more errors. The time lost wasn't just the minutes of the interruption, it was the substantial overhead of re-engaging with the deep cognitive model. This is the crucial discovery: the cost of an interruption is not linear. A 5-minute interruption results in far more than 5 minutes of lost work. It causes a focus deficit that can take up to 20 minutes to fully recover from, assuming full recovery is even possible in the constantly interrupted modern environment. The attention residue is a measurable anchor dragging down performance. The first major clue, therefore, is the invisible inefficiency. Busy work is the visible cause: the interruptions, the meetings, the task switching. The switch cost and attention residue are the invisible effect that explains the 10-to-1 ratio. It's the moment when the mathematical model proves the anecdote. An hour of pure, single-task focus becomes 10 times more potent because it avoids 9 hours of cumulative, invisible switch cost penalty. This discovery provides the scientific backbone for the entire philosophy. Protecting focus isn't a luxury, it's a non-negotiable optimization strategy. To understand the epidemic of busy work, we must trace its origins. The context lies in the collision of 3 historical and technological forces: the Industrial Revolution's legacy, the rise of the managerial class, and the advent of the Internet and mobile computing. The Industrial Revolution entrenched the belief that time equals output. A worker on an assembly line produced a visible, tangible product every minute. This metric of physical presence was mistakenly imported into the knowledge economy. We started paying knowledge workers for their time at a desk, not for the insight they generated. This is the foundational error: confusing input with outcome. The rise of the managerial class further institutionalized busyness. Managers needed visible proof of their team's activity. The tools of control became meetings, status reports, and constant check-ins. These activities are, by their nature, busy work. They are designed to manage perception and mitigate risk, not to drive breakthrough creativity or complex problem-solving. A manager's fear of a team member looking idle is a powerful driver of unnecessary tasks. Then came the Internet and, specifically, email and chat applications. These technologies provided the perfect, frictionless medium for perpetual interruption. They democratized the ability to demand a colleague's attention instantly, breaking down any remaining barrier to deep work. The default expectation shifted from "do not disturb unless critical" to "be available at all times." This created the current context, a work environment where high-value, focused cognition is practically impossible without extreme, intentional self-discipline. The modern context is a digital assembly line for attention fragmentation. Every notification, every poorly scheduled meeting, every reply-all email is a tiny, systemic force pushing the worker away from the 10x leverage of focused effort and back into the 1x linearity of fragmented busy work. The key is recognizing that our tools and our cultural norms are relics of a different era, actively sabotaging the intellectual output of the knowledge worker. The theory of deep work faces significant opposition. The conflicting theories often arise from vested interests in the status quo, primarily from the proponents of hypercollaboration and agile methodologies when misapplied. One conflicting theory is the serendipity myth. This argument suggests that constant communication and interruption are necessary for spontaneous, cross-pollination of ideas. That the informal, hallway chat, often facilitated by constant availability, is the engine of innovation. Proponents fear that a culture of deep focus will lead to silos and a loss of collaborative energy. They argue that the occasional productive interruption justifies the constant barrage of busy work. Another conflicting theory is the just-in-time management model. In this framework, responsiveness is the highest virtue. Any delay is seen as a failure. A quick reply to an email, even if it breaks concentration, is prioritized over the longer-term value of the task being interrupted. The immediate and visible need trumps the important and invisible need. The stakes are escalating rapidly. Companies caught in the busywork trap are being outmaneuvered by those who have embraced focus. We see this in the speed of product development, the originality of marketing campaigns, and the quality of strategic decision-making. Mark Denton's company, mired in meetings and endless communication loops, is losing clients to smaller firms where 2 or 3 people can produce work that used to take his team of 10 a full quarter. The cost of busyness is no longer just poor personal productivity, it is organizational extinction. The personal stakes are also immense. The pressure of constant context switching leads directly to burnout, chronic stress, and diminished professional satisfaction. Workers feel they are working harder than ever, yet seeing less substantial output, leading to a crisis of purpose. The conflict is no longer just theoretical, it's an existential battle for business relevance and human sanity. The organizations that fail to recognize the profound economic value of uninterrupted focus will simply cease to compete effectively in the global marketplace. For our key subject, CEO Mark Denton, the point of no return arrived during a major product launch failure. The company had spent 6 months on the project, sinking millions in R&D and marketing. The product itself was good, but the execution was flawed, marked by an astonishing number of minor, easily avoidable errors in the final weeks. Mark reviewed the post-mortem with a terrifying realization. All the key team members had been extremely busy right up to the launch day. Their calendars were packed. Their email chains were massive. Yet, the critical, high-leverage tasks, the final QA testing, the precise wording of the launch messaging, the integration check, were all done in a state of high fragmentation, squeezed in between meetings. He discovered that the lead engineer had caught a critical database error but had to abandon fixing it halfway through to attend a mandatory, low-priority budget review. When he returned an hour later, the mental thread was lost, and he missed a secondary, related error that ultimately tanked the launch. The 1 hour lost to busywork cost the company 6 months of effort. This moment was the point of no return for Mark. He saw clearly that the company's problem wasn't a lack of talent or effort, it was a lethal, self-imposed process of attention suicide. He understood that his entire leadership philosophy, which rewarded visible activity and constant availability, was the root cause of the failure. The stakes became clarity: either radically restructure the company around deep focus, or face inevitable decline. He realized the irony: he was rewarding his team for the behavior that was destroying their performance. The old way of working was now a provable liability. The path back to high performance required a cultural revolution, a deliberate, painful culling of all unnecessary communication, meetings, and obligations. Mark was forced to make a decisive choice: continue to manage activity and fail, or manage focus and thrive. The halfway revelation is the discovery that focus is not merely a time management skill, it is a skill of strategic omission. The twist is that the most powerful tool for achieving the 10x productivity is not a new app or a new routine, but the simple, courageous act of saying no. We return to Dr. Anya Sharma, who now consults with major institutions. She realized that her most productive hours were not merely blocked out, they were fiercely defended. Her greatest challenge was not maintaining her own focus, but protecting her calendar from the demands of others who operated in a busywork culture. The midpoint twist is the realization that busywork often serves a social, not a professional, purpose. When people ask for a meeting, they are often seeking reassurance, validation, or to transfer the cognitive burden of a decision onto someone else. They are not always seeking necessary collaboration. By saying no to a meeting, Anya isn't being uncooperative, she is demanding a more focused, asynchronous, and efficient form of communication, like a written briefing or a single, bulleted question. The revelation for Mark Denton's company was a radical, mandatory, no-meeting day policy, coupled with an asynchronous default rule for all internal communication. When people were forced to write down their thoughts and questions instead of calling a meeting, they often realized their question could be answered by 2 sentences of text, or, more often, was not necessary at all. The twist transforms the entire premise. It's not about finding more time, it's about creating cognitive space by strategically rejecting 90% of the demands on your attention. The 10x focus is achieved not by adding a new positive habit, but by ruthlessly removing a dozen negative ones. This requires a profound shift from a culture of acceptance, where every request is honored, to a culture of skepticism, where every demand on attention must prove its necessity. New evidence from neuroscience confirms the deep psychological impact of fragmented work. Brain imaging studies show that the prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function and complex decision-making, becomes significantly less efficient under conditions of constant task switching. It's a literal neurological fatigue. The psychological impact of busywork is a state known as pseudo-satisfaction. The constant, low-level completion of small tasks, sending an email, checking a notification, clearing a notification badge, activates the brain's reward centers. This gives the user a continuous, but shallow, feeling of accomplishment, tricking them into believing they are being productive when they are merely being reactive. The new evidence highlights the difference between flow state and fragmentation. Flow state, the deep immersion in a task, leads to the production of potent neurochemicals that reinforce the behavior and allow for effortless, high-quality output. Fragmentation, or busywork, keeps the brain in a state of high alert, low-level stress, driven by the fear of missing something important. This stress state is antithetical to creative problem-solving and long-term memory formation. We introduced data from a major university study tracking knowledge workers. The study found a direct correlation: the higher the self-reported feeling of busyness, the lower the objective measure of creative output and strategic value generated. The workers who protected their focus reported lower daily stress and a higher sense of professional mastery. The evidence is clear: the 1 hour of focus is worth 10 hours of busywork because only focused work accesses the brain's highest leverage operating mode, the state of flow. Busywork traps the brain in its low-level, high-cost operating mode, constantly dissipating energy on the cost of context switching. This neurological reality proves that the 10-to-1 ratio is not an exaggeration, but a conservative estimate of the cognitive debt incurred by a fragmented lifestyle. The truth about the supremacy of focused work is often suppressed, not by a shadowy conspiracy, but by the inertia of institutional habit and the defense mechanisms of those who benefit from the busywork culture. The truth is an uncomfortable challenge to the current power structure. Attempts to suppress the truth come from three primary sources. First, middle management, whose entire value proposition is often built on coordinating and controlling the visible activity of others. When a team adopts a deep work protocol, managers can feel marginalized because their coordinating function is diminished. The truth, that most of their coordination is unnecessary, threatens their role. They may actively resist focus days or no-meeting policies by subtly undermining them with urgent exceptions. Second, the technology industry itself. The business model of most digital platforms is attention harvesting. They thrive on the fragmentation of focus. Any movement that champions single-tasking and non-reactivity is a direct threat to their quarterly earnings. They constantly innovate new ways to interrupt and engage, making the defense of focus an increasingly difficult, heroic effort. Third, the individual's own ego. Admitting that one is busy but unproductive requires a painful act of self-reflection. It's easier to claim to be swamped than to admit one is spending 80% of their day on low-value tasks. The suppression comes from an internal, psychological denial that busyness is a badge of honor. This section explores how Mark Denton had to fight his own executive team. They sought his new policies not as optimization, but as a relaxation of standards. They feared the perception of being less busy in front of clients. The suppression is a cultural immune response, an instinctive rejection of an uncomfortable truth that requires a fundamental change in behavior and a dismantling of established, yet dysfunctional, rituals. The pursuit phase of our narrative focuses on the active steps required to transition a culture and an individual from busywork to deep focus. It is a confrontation with internal and external forces of distraction. For the individual, the pursuit is the establishment of the sacred hour. This is a non-negotiable block of 60 to 90 minutes, dedicated to the single most important task of the day, done at the peak of cognitive performance. The confrontation is with the digital tools, turning off notifications, using website blockers, and physically moving the phone out of reach. This is a deliberate, conscious act of self-control against a world engineered for distraction. For the organization, the confrontation is systemic. Mark Denton's company instituted a radical meeting audit. Every recurring meeting had to justify its existence by proving it achieved a tangible, non-status update goal. 90% were either cancelled or converted into short, asynchronous written updates. The confrontation was messy. People felt excluded, but the silence was quickly filled with actual, productive output. The pursuit demanded a change in leadership behavior. Mark had to visibly model the behavior. He started publishing his own focus block on his calendar and refused to break it, even for minor executive requests. This sent a clear signal: the value of deep work was prioritized over immediate managerial convenience. The core confrontation is with the lie that everything is urgent. The pursuit involves separating true criticality from manufactured drama. By slowing down the communication and forcing workers to confront their highest leverage task, the culture confronts the illusion of perpetual crisis. It is a slow, difficult battle to replace the dopamine hit of reactivity with the deeper satisfaction of purposeful creation. The final pieces of the puzzle involve integrating the psychological discipline with the organizational structure to make the 10x focus sustainable. It's about building a system that assumes focus as the default state, rather than the exception. Dr. Anya Sharma refined her model to account for the cognitive buffer. She realized that to ensure the 1 hour of focus, she needed to build in a 10-minute transition buffer before and after the deep work block. This buffer allows the mind to transition fully into the complex task without bringing in attention residue from the previous task, and to cleanly offload the complex model before switching to shallow work. This small, structural addition dramatically increased the effectiveness of the focus hour. For Mark Denton's firm, the final piece was redefining job descriptions. Employees were no longer judged on their responsiveness score, or their calendar density. They were judged on their ability to deliver 2 or 3 high-impact outcomes per quarter, which required deep, focused effort. The performance review system now explicitly penalized visible busy work that did not contribute to core results. The key insight is architectural: you cannot bolt focus onto a busywork culture. The entire house must be rebuilt. This involves eliminating the systems, the endless meetings, the constant communication streams, that make focused work impossible. The puzzle pieces fall into place when the organization values results over activity. The final realization is that the hour of focus is not just about personal output, it creates a positive feedback loop. When one person focuses deeply, they produce high-quality work that reduces busy work for their colleagues, creating a compounding effect across the entire organization. The primary conclusion, the core truth revealed, is that the equation, 1 hour of focus is worth 10 hours of busy work, is not a motivational slogan, but a verifiable economic and cognitive law of the knowledge economy. The law rests on 3 pillars. The nonlinear cost of interruption. The true cost of fragmentation is the cognitive switch cost and attention residue, which multiply the time lost by a factor of 3 to 5, turning a few minutes of interruption into an hour of diminished productivity. The scarcity of deep cognitive space, breakthrough innovation, strategic thinking, and complex problem-solving require the brain to operate in a flow state. This state is a resource that is inherently scarce and easily destroyed by fragmentation, yet it is the only source of 10x value. Busyness as avoidance. The pervasive culture of busywork is a collective psychological defense mechanism, a comfort blanket that shields individuals from the genuine risk and mental difficulty inherent in high-value, deep concentration. The truth is that the traditional 40-hour work week, when filled with fragmented activity, often contains less than 4 hours of genuine, high-value output. The remaining 36 hours are the busy work, the necessary logistics, the unnecessary performance, and the massive overhead of attention switching. The solution is a radical act of subtraction. The path to achieving the 10x leverage is to aggressively protect and maximize the few hours of deep work, and to ruthlessly compress, automate, or eliminate the mass of shallow, logistical tasks. The truth is a simple, harsh choice: accept the high-leverage power of focus, or remain trapped in the low-leverage, exhaustive cycle of visible but meaningless activity. The aftermath of embracing focus is a profound transformation, both for the individual and the organization. The legacy of the movement is the reprioritization of cognitive health and output over mere activity. For Mark Denton's firm, the measurable result was a 60% reduction in average project completion time and a dramatic increase in product quality and team morale. Their legacy became a new corporate model where the calendar was empty by default, and meetings were scheduled only after a written proposal failed to resolve the issue. This structural shift is now tied to a modern movement of companies adopting similar, deep work charters. Dr. Anya Sharma's work created a new standard for professional conduct. Her insights are now applied to areas far beyond physics, from surgical teams who must minimize interruptions during complex procedures, to artists who need unbroken creative blocks. The legacy is the formal recognition of attention as a corporate resource as critical and finite as capital or time. Modern ties show the continuing struggle against the digital tide. The rise of generative AI and automation is not a threat to the focused worker, it is the final nail in the coffin of the busy worker. AI is perfectly suited to handle the 10 hours of shallow, predictable busy work, the summaries, the drafts, the data entry. The only thing left for the human to do is the high-level, focused, strategic, and creative work that AI cannot yet perform. The individual who masters focus is leveraging AI, the individual who is still doing busy work is about to be replaced by it. The modern tie is that focus is now the prerequisite for human relevance. The journey from the chaotic comfort of busy work to the disciplined power of focus is a story of transformation. We have dissected the problem, identified the psychological traps, confirmed the neurological science, and witnessed the organizational solutions. The concluding summary is a simple mandate: protect the hour. The 10-to-1 ratio is achieved by understanding that time is not the core metric, cognitive bandwidth is. The focused hour is a leverage point, a lever that moves massive professional mountains because it avoids the cumulative tax of attention residue and allows the mind to enter a state of true creative production. It demands the courage to say no, the discipline to create stillness, and the wisdom to prioritize impact over effort. We have seen the costs of fragmentation in Mark Denton's failure and the rewards of discipline in Dr. Anya Sharma's breakthroughs. The busy person is a victim of their environment, the focused person is the master of their attention. Yet, a lingering mystery remains. Given the clear evidence, the proven benefits, and the high cost of the alternative, why do so many people and organizations still choose the path of perpetual busyness? The mystery is a matter of the human spirit. It's the final, enduring question of why we cling so tightly to the performance of effort, and why we are so fundamentally afraid of the silence, the difficulty, and the profound potential of a single, deeply focused hour. This fear is the last, great barrier to unlocking the 10x potential that lies dormant within us all.